Now, this is the feast of St. Boniface, and as I was saying at the beginning, he was a monk in England, in Exeter, but he felt this nudge to go and preach the gospel, and he was an instrument of providence, for vast numbers were converted. He was bishop there in the present area of Germany, where he's buried as a martyr and buried in Fulda on the island where the German bishops meet. The gospel that we had in his honour was about the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. Here in Dundalk you have a big church where the Redemptorists operate. In fact, we've had more than one baptism for your family in that church, I believe. The Redemptorists were shepherds of souls who used to give everything, and still do when they're on the missions. I'll tell you a little story about one thing that happened to one of their missionaries. It was a good while back now, but they were in these terrible areas fighting against nature, the jungle and all that went with it. In the first wave of evangelization, there was nothing. Very, very primitive. One day, the missionary in that area, a good young priest, was in trouble. Yes, he had with him an orphan that he was protecting. He was only a child, and he felt very responsible for him. The waves were rising in the river, and they were in serious trouble. Their canoe capsized, and he could see what was ahead. There was no way they could fight against these currents, and they were going to die. Now he could swim, and he could have saved himself. But the little child, what would he do in that situation, you little children? If you were in that situation, you knew that this priest could swim, what would you do if you knew you couldn't swim? Go on, what would you do by instinct? I think you'd cling on to him pretty hard, wouldn't you? For dear life, you'd hang on to the only means of hope. So this little child was clinging on to this young priest for all he was worth. It's all he had as a hope. But he had not been baptized. Now, that meant a lot to the priest, because he had to be baptized to be sure that his soul was okay if he did die. Do you know what he did? He had the weight of this child on him, who was stopping his arm from saving him by swimming. He couldn't move his arm to swim. The child was covering everything out to make it impossible for him to move. So what did he do? They were both going down, and with the other free arm, the last bit of energy he had, he managed to get enough of the water in which they were drowning, and to cover the head of the drowning child as he was still alive, and pronounce the formula of baptism with the water, in which a few seconds later they both died. So he was a good shepherd who gave his life for one soul, knowing the importance of one immortal soul. So when we baptize little people like yourself, we're doing something without that drama, and it's just as important. We're bringing you onto the right side of heaven. So you little people, hang on to what you've got now. You're born into good families, never lose it, and don't let anyone take away your purity. What we've got in baptism, we hang on to, and that means cleaning our soul of serious sin. I think you know what I mean. Bad words, bad company, stealing, and anything which takes away from the peace of our soul. And be good to those around you. So God wants your good. Correspond and don't anesthetize your soul. Children, the Angles and the Saxons handed on the sound of little things, the ancient name that patted tiny heads in ages gone, the way of every age. And 'tis the same antiquity of sound that calls anew the unborn morrow and the newest morn, fruit of a growing dream that long nights knew to be the fairest gift of youth's full dawn. There is in trusting arms and weeping eyes a depth that calls on depth. There is within an angel clasp a force that rocks the skies of long and stoic thought, that called truth sin. For when a little world draws near us thus, we come too close to what is part of us.